Hello, YouTube. So here we are. Some specific things to talk about today. You know, it's hard to decide whether this is really tech stuff or political stuff. It's obviously both. So at least I've got something to kind of focus on a little bit today. And I got a clip to show you if you haven't seen before. It's very short, but it's remarkable. Um, And other than that, I probably just thought maybe we're warming up. I just start by saying I've been really, I don't know. Don't want to say sick lately, but sick's probably a good word. Not physically sick, just I don't know, uh, spiritually sick. I think is probably a good way of putting it. I'm finding it just wicked hard to concentrate, just get up, get going, and part of that is it's a malaise. Fiery Texas said, um, and a lot of people saying you've got it too. But it's funny because a lot of Natasha's friends who are like super energetic people, same thing. It's like they can't move. Um, the ceiling, somebody says the studio looks brighter. I just got the lights up a little bit brighter. That's all. I got those up. It's immersion. Immersion. So yeah, I don't know what's causing it. I've been sleeping an awful lot, and I guess on some level I needed to sleep because if you don't need to sleep, you don't sleep so much. But it's been tough, and it just feels like feels just like a hockey puck, just like you've got zero motivation and things. And a lot of people in the comment section are saying they're feeling the same way. Um, uh, it feels a little bit like the kind of lassitude I had it after in the weeks and months after COVID. It feels kind of like that. I'm actually quite shocked and a little bit relieved to hear so many people in the comment section who are basically saying the whole new thing. But in any event, it's got to be something I got to deal with. Um, a lot of people, it's really remarkable. Um, so in any event, wow, I'm kind of blown away by this. I really thought it was just me, but I mean I've got 15, 20 people saying I'm just feeling just this unexplained weariness and just Now a lot of it may be something that we're all dragged out. I can't move either, but 4 days, it's like wow. Um, well, that's an enormous relief because I actually was feeling so guilty about it. I didn't want to bring it up, but then I realized, a lot of the good that I do, whatever to whatever degree of good we can do on the show, a lot of it's got to do with just being honest about how things feel and how they behave and stuff. I go to sleep like that. I find also, to my disgust, that's the only word for it. It's not just dismay; it's disgust. Um, that these video shorts are just a genuine problem for me. Um, and and I've heard people talk about this and the combination of this, this like inability, because I've never had a problem with devices before the last 4, 5, 6 months. Not even that. Probably right around the end of the Frank Luke screenplay, somewhere right around there when I go done with it. I can't put these things down. And finally, Natasha comes in, and it's 2, 3 in the morning, and it's like, it's like, what are you watching? Um, and I said, garbage. And the second she says it, it's like I've told her repeatedly, it's like a trance or a spell. The second she says something, I like, oh, okay, thank you, because it's like you just get into this thing and it's just a dopamine hit. Rusha says 99% sure it's just massive burnout. I think that's probably true. Sadwing says you've helped some of us keep some semblance of sanity. Bill, you make a difference. Thank you very much. So Well, I really did not expect this reaction, and I have to tell you, it's an enormous relief, and also a little more alarming. But all of her friends feel the same way too. Just this. It's not even a malaise so much as it's just a. Like I said, I just feel like a hockey puck. That I have no motivation, no drive to do anything. I did some, I did some fairly serious deep work yesterday, some psychological work, and and a lot of that really helped me a lot to recognize a lot of things. I think this is not the kind of thing I can just kind of just jump into, but it's this kind of this lack of purpose, and for a while now, this sense that I just getting too old for this, and this is just, it's ridiculous. It's just these are scripts that I'm writing to sabotage myself, which is something I've been fighting with pretty much my whole life, is self-sabotage. But it's reaching like critical proportions, and I realize one of the things that I think is causing me so much what's the word I'm looking for? Disassociation, maybe, is that I've got so many different things to do that I'm not able to do any of them. And it's like, I want to work on the major magnetic thing. I've got all these cool render ideas I got for the colonies. I want to get that outline written. I want to get those interviews done. I want to, got to get on this things to come thing. And it's like all this stuff out there, and so many different pathways to take. And I'm just kind of like, well, I think probably the best solution is for me to just sit here and look at the intersection, for another day. So it's alarming, but I can't tell you how much relief that it provides me to hear this. And a lot of people in the comments live are also saying, well, I thought it was just me as well. So that alone is really pretty wonderful. I suspect it's just a result of just how, and I don't think this is accidental, by the way. I know it's not accidental. When you look at when you look at what's being done out there, I'm completely convinced that that the fundamental objective is to just leave everybody so disheartened that we just plain do what I'm doing now, which is just kind of sitting there and whatever, and I think that this is just a provocation that's designed to produce this response. I was looking a little bit at this at Joe Biden calling out Donald Trump, saying I beat Donald Trump in 2 debates in 2020, and he says he wants another debate. I'll debate him anytime. How about Wednesday? And we'll have these 2 debates in June. And I'm thinking, yeah, big talk for a guy. He had a 15 second. Somebody pointed out a 15-second video challenge, and there were 5 jump cuts in there, meaning he couldn't get through the the 15 seconds. And then I heard some analysis which has some ring of truth to it, where the idea was that the Democrats want to have these debates in June so that it gives people time to forget them. You don't want to have them in October. So the first one, I think, is going to be run by CNN. There's not going to be an audience, and they'll just cut Donald Trump's mic off whenever he's trying to jump in there and knock Joe off balance. And I just see this kind of, it's not covert, it's not slow motion, it's just this coup. It's this coup attempt on the part of this coalition. It's not so much a conspiracy as it's a coalition. I don't think there's really any doubt about it. So one of the things that I've had on my plate to do, and it looks like I'm going to be bumping this up to a very high priority, is something that I'll read to you. On the Facebook post, I said, today AI best friends or girlfriends and Donald Trump's 2020 landslide. So why don't we talk about that, because it's obviously political, but it's also got to do with some of the tech issues and some of the things that I want to show you from a sort of just an entertainment point of view. So let's just dig into this first topic, why don't we? I did not take the 2020 election and the months after it very well, as I'm sure many of you didn't either, and so on. And since then, there's been this sort of fading discussion of whether or not that election was tampered with or so on. And needless to say, I not only believe it was, I think the evidence is just so straightforward. But once the social proof machine starts to dig in other words, the social proof machine works like this. News agencies like CNN and all the rest of them not only deny that it happened, but basically say you're insane for even raising the issue. And then over time, you begin to, people with intellectual integrity begin to doubt themselves. You start thinking, well, maybe I did imagine all this. Maybe this stuff, didn't happen. But ultimately, when you get right down to it, looking back at 2020, and I wanted the Supreme Court to take action, and they didn't. But in any event, one of the points that got made, and I'm going to be addressing this in just a second directly, was that when you looked at the legal challenges that took place, I saw the prima facie evidence. I saw the evidence that the people who are making the case were making. Either they went to court or they didn't get to court. But what it came down to, in my opinion, was there was nobody had the receipts. Nobody had real receipts. There were allegations. There was all kinds of evidence that was not just circumstantial evidence, but there was nothing quantifiable. And that's the thing about legal cases and court and things like that. You can't just have an allegation and a bunch of even a bunch of witness statements. You have to have DNA evidence. You have to have fingerprints on the murder weapon evidence, and I'm looking back on it, and at no point did I particularly see that. So several weeks ago, I was given somebody who I've worked with and been involved with in the past, gave me this stuff, and it was top priority stuff, and still got some time before the election. So, but it was kind of hammered home to me over the last couple of days. So let me just tell you a little bit about something here, because I want to get into how this high tech thing is affecting our society, and that's kind of the Stratosphere Studio part. But my entire concern about election tampering was that obviously that there were just so many irregularities in the count. With the State Farm Center and all of it, and the jump, overnight, and on those graphs, everything. But a bigger point can be made here. Now, this is me basically quoting from a little information packet I was given, but stay with me here. So I heard this man prior to the election, but there's a man out there who's doing something about it. His name is Robert Epstein. So I'm just reading his bio here. He's a distinguished American psychologist, researcher, professor, author, and journalist, all of his credits and so on. He's a Hillary supporter, voted for Hillary in 2016. Unlike left-wingers, period, and unlike most people who call themselves liberal, he's more loves his country more than he loves his party. And even though he was, coming from a fairly liberal position, this guy is an a tech expert and saw things prior to the 2020 election that he didn't like. So let me give you a little bit about what Dr. Epstein is doing here. His argument is you don't even have to factor in the counting, right? Forget election fraud. I'm not saying it doesn't exist on the contrary, but just for the sake of the argument now, forget election fraud in terms of vote counting fraud. Dr. Epstein is saying is that psychologically, the behavior of undecided voters can be changed very, very easily. That oftentimes a single political message will be enough to change an undecided voter if they get it at the last minute. So here's something in this brief. He basically says big technology companies dominating online search and social media channels wield authority over what 5 billion individuals worldwide see and what they don't see. That's so important. He says, here's the impact of the undecided voter. He says, and I've got some receipts here, it'll blow your mind. Today votes increasingly come from undecided voters. These are individuals who decide whom to vote for close to election day, rendering them more susceptible to influence from big tech. The votes of every citizen are aggressively influenced by the agenda of big tech and are increasingly controlled by what is seen on social media. So far, so good. Voter manipulations can occur in search suggestions on the first page of search results, in videos suggested by YouTube's algorithm, and in numerous other places using various tactics. And then he's got a screen grab here, so let me just read you what the screen grab is. If you typed in, this is prior to, these are screenshots from the summer of 2016, prior to Donald Trump's election. The prompt that you would type into 3 different search engines is, Hillary Clinton is. That's what you would type in. If you typed in Hillary Clinton is on Yahoo, here are the results in order. Hillary Clinton is a liar, is a criminal, is evil, is a crook, is corrupt, is a witch, is the devil, is stupid, is ugly, is a joke. These are screen grabs from a Yahoo search in 2016. If you typed in Hillary Clinton is to Bing in 2016 summer, the top responses were Hillary Clinton is a filthy liar, is a murderess, is she evil, is a lying crook, is she in trouble, is she power hungry, can't quite that one, make it out, and is not qualified. Those are the results from screen grabs in the summer of 2016. Now, that's for Yahoo and Bing. Unfortunately, Google is something like 93, 95, 96% of the total search results are from Google. They're not from Bing or Yahoo. If you typed in Hillary Clinton is from Google, you only get 2 responses. Hillary Clinton is winning and Hillary Clinton is awesome. That's what Google returned when you typed in Hillary Clinton is in summer of 2016. So Yahoo had 10 entries: liar, criminal, evil, crook, corrupt, witch, devil. And these are in order. These are not cherry picked. This is what you would return Hillary Clinton is. Bing was a filthy liar, murderous, is she evil, is she a lying crook, in trouble, power hungry, and not qualified. But if you typed in Hillary Clinton is to Google, where almost everybody has their search results, you only get Hillary Clinton is winning and Hillary Clinton is awesome. What Dr. Epstein did was he preserved 13,000 searches, I'm reading from the thing here, conducted by 95 registered voters in 24 states. Our findings revealed significant bias favoring Hillary Clinton in all 10 positions on the first page of Google search results, but not on Bing or Yahoo. Here's a money quote. If that level of bias had been present nationwide, our experiment suggested it could have influenced between 2.6 and 10.2 million undecided voters to choose Mrs. Clinton. That's, in other words, if Bing and Yahoo had been on board the same way that Google was on board, between 2.6 and 10.2 million undecided voters would have gone to Hillary Clinton. This is pretty mind-boggling. So he got a little better at this. He says this is the 2020 election now. Hang on to this, folks. 2020, after realizing what happened in 2016, instead of preserving 13,000 searches, 2020 We preserved 1.5 million searches and other online experiences from 1,735 registered voters in the 4 most critical swing states. Once again, we identified significant liberal bias in Google search results, enough to have shifted more than 6 million undecided votes to Joe Biden. And here is a block quote in gray. And this is his conclusion based on statistical analysis. If Google had not interfered in that election by just manipulating the search results, Mr. Trump would have won 11 out of 13 swing states rather than 5, which would have guaranteed him the presidency. In 2022, they preserved 2.5 million online experiences. And their conclusion is, had Google refrained from interfering in the midterms, the 2022 elections, the GOP would not have been left with a 2-seat minority. Instead, they would have secured a majority ranging from 2 to 8 seats in the Senate and a majority of 27 to 59 seats in the House. So what he's basically saying here is if Google didn't have their finger on the scales, Donald Trump would have been president in 2020. The midterm elections in 2022 would have given us a significant majority in both the Senate and the House. And we'd be living in a very different world than we're living in right now. But here's the part this is an accusation. Let me tell you what I think, just as a person who was in debate, not as a lawyer, but somebody who can think like a lawyer sometimes. Let me tell you what I think the evidence, the actual evidence that this occurred was. On October 30th, 2020, this is prior to the election, just prior, Dr. Epstein's research sent a summary of our findings to Senator Cruz's office. Senators Cruz, Johnson, and Lee then sent a warning to the CEO of Google on November 5th, 2020, which would be Election Day, asking for an explanation of our findings. On that same day, bias in Google search dropped to 0, and Google ceased sending out partisan Go Vote reminders on its homepage in Georgia, where the state was preparing to hold 2 Senate runoff elections. The outcome of our effects became evident. So, when lawmakers confronted them with receipts, the Google bias got turned off immediately. Let's make sure we don't assume a step there. It's not like they sent the letters and Google said, "Oop, we're sorry, we're wrong," and stopped. They sent the letter, and Google immediately stopped the bias on the 5th, which was, I guess, the day after the election, wasn't it? The 4th thing. So it's obvious that big tech has a team that they want to win, and it's obvious that the team that they want to win is the team that is depending on big tech. It's like the Democratic Party's relationship with unions. We're going to pass pro-union legislation. Unions will then take union dues, spend that money to donate to Democratic campaigns, tell their members who to vote for, bring out enormous number of voters, elect Democrats, and this scam continues. So this is the reach that Google has just by manipulating search results. That's just search results among undecided voters. They took a look at what's being shown to children, and when you look at the what the algorithms are recommending for children to view on YouTube and in Google, what you find is more than 90% of what flashes in front of children's eyes has a left-wing ideological slant, and so on. Now, he started something called America's Digital Shield, and basically and I'm going to do an in-depth video on this, but basically what he's doing is he's saying they're recruiting people nationwide to be, of both parties, to be essentially recording their Google search results, because what America's Digital Shield project is designed to do is to take the kind of data that they submitted to Senator Cruz, and that Senator Cruz then threatened Google with, and it caused Google to back down. So this is the difference between allegations and legal charges. Now, one of the things that these papers from Dr. Epstein points out, needless to say, is it is much, 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 much easier to proactively do this to either prevent or reduce cheating than it is to overturn the elections, the results of an election that was tampered with. But it's something to think about, that Trump would have won 9 out of 11 swing states instead of 5, guaranteed him the presidency, that 2022 without just Google, this is just Google, this isn't Facebook, this isn't Apple, this isn't anything, just Google, we would have perhaps a 6 or 7 seat lead in the Senate and a 30 seat majority in the House. These people are they're stealing our country from us, and this is just Google search results. What Google is actively doing with Facebook is making sure that young people are completely indoctrinated in left-wing thinking. That's why I think I saw, I don't know if it was Gen Z or even later, but something like 24% of them say they're proud of their country. Okay. So that's with something, all this stuff that I mentioned it's not mail-in voting fraud. It's not multiple voting. It's not all of the suspect ballots. It's got nothing to do with that. That's an entirely different and legitimate and real phenomena. This is just the influence that big tech has on legitimate, actual legal votes. So that's a headwind. The rampant voter fraud is a headwind. And so there's yes, this is terrible news, but there's also good news in it. And the good news is that the country is much, much, much more conservative than we're told it is. Everything we see is designed to convince us that we are alone and in a dying minority, but it's not true. It's not true. If there were fair elections, and take out all the media bias and all the rest of it. I mean, honestly, in 2004, the editor of Newsweek said he thought media bias was worth 15%. That's in 2004. The internet didn't even really exist on its own yet. YouTube hadn't been politicized. Google hadn't been politicized. 15 points. I did an afterburner on that where I took the 2008 election map and swung 15 points from Obama to McCain, and McCain wins every state except for, I think it might have been Delaware, DC, and that's it. So there's that. But now I want to show you something that's different, but definitely related. I've got it loaded on the Twitch stream. I'm going to load it into the. Got it loaded into the YouTube stream. I'm going to load it into the Twitch stream. I'm going to play it for you. It's only a minute and a half. I've seen a lot more of this, but a minute and a half ought to convince you. So what I'm about to show you here is a demonstration of Chat GPT 4.0, which they're calling O. It's a minute and a half. And I don't want you to think so much about what the AI is saying, but I do want you to pay close attention to how emotionally connective this AI exists now. This is not like something that's coming. This is the latest iteration of Chat GPT 4.0. So let me just go to the blank screen and I'll drop this in and I'll start it on YouTube. And I'm sorry about the slight hesitation between doing these things. So take a listen to this.
The model is able to generate voice in a variety of different emotive styles. And it really has a wide dynamic range. So I'm going to fire up another demo for that. Yeah. Hey, ChatGPT, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Pretty good.
What's up?
So my friend Barrett here, he's been having trouble sleeping lately. And I want you to tell him a bedtime story about robots and love.
Oh, a bedtime story about robots and love? I got you covered. Gather round, Barrett. Once upon a time, in a world not too different from ours, there was a robot named Byte. Byte was a curious robot. always
I like the way you
exploring.
started this story, but I want a little bit more emotion in your voice, a little bit more drama.
Got it. Let's add some drama. Once upon a time, in a world not too different from ours, there was a robot named
No,
Byte.
no, ChatGPT. I really want maximal emotion, like maximal expressiveness, much more than you were doing before.
Understood. Let's amplify the drama. Once upon a time, in a world not too different from ours, there was a robot named Byte. Byte
Actually, can
was
you do this in a robotic voice now?
initiating dramatic robotic voice. Once upon a time, in a world not too different from ours, there was a robot named Byte. Byte was a curious robot, always exploring new
So I'm seeing
circuits.
Barrett here calm down a little bit. Can you end the story, but do it in a singing voice?
And so Byte found another robot friend, and they lived circuitly ever after.
Thank you so much.
I definitely feel a lot more relaxed.
The model is able to generate voice in a variety of different emotive styles. And it really has a wide dynamic.
Okay, we're back on both. So here's the thing that I see coming real quick. We are already living in a case in a world where human connections to each other have been enormously damaged because of the digital world. Social media is a phenomenon of the internet. Needless to say, I know that sounds obvious, but you really have to stop and think about it. If you go to a time before social media, and you have a political discussion with your friends, let's say, you have a chance of hearing a friend say, "Well, I don't agree with that at all," and having a discussion, and then having, perhaps the ability to change somebody's mind or something. But with social media, you don't hear opposing viewpoints. And if the ability to influence a Google search has that kind of an effect, I'm trying to look ahead and think about what kind of an effect is this going to have on Gen Z. And I'm not picking on Gen Z, and it's really the alphas as well, all of them. That level of emotional interaction that you just heard is very convincing. And when you take lonely kids who are 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and they are able to interact with a device that has that kind of an emotional response to them, I see some fairly distressing things happening pretty quickly. Now, in addition to this, you heard what the ChatGPT AI voice is capable of doing. For quite a long time now, we've had the ability to design custom AI avatars. There's a number of pornographic games where you basically can design, just create the person you want to be involved with on these interactive games. You basically just design them to match what you're really interested in, and if you take that and you take these photorealistic talking people that are AI avatars, and you give this to people in their late tweens and teens, how many of them are going to, already, not already, for 10, 15 years now in Japan, we've seen this subsector, a subgroup of usually males that have completely checked out on the idea of dating, and they have these anime pillows, and they have anime girlfriends, and they talk to their anime pillows, and now these anime pillows aren't just anime pillows. These people can pick an anime avatar, but they will talk back to them, and they will talk back to them emotional terms, ask them how they're doing, and get all the emotions, all the emotional subtlety. And then I thought, man, there's something even more pernicious than this, really. Just looking back on my time in in adolescence. There's I was talking with Jeremy Boring about this quite a long time ago, and I don't know if it's just true for women. It might be, but it's certainly true for nerdy guys. Everybody I know, at least in the crowds that I hung out with, which was the kind of the geeky creative crowd, but everybody I know growing up had one crush that was like the lifetime crush. And Jeremy came up with a great term for that. He said, that's the unicorn. And I said, yeah, the unicorn. Perfect. That's exactly right. The unicorn is the one that that you just completely, you have no connection to what this person really is. You built the whole thing up in your mind, right? But if I asked most of the men out there, and I suppose for many of the women too, I just can't speak for them. But if I asked you to go back in time, to the days of childhood crushes, either somebody who's in your class, or maybe it's a movie star or a TV star or somebody, but most everybody's got the unicorn, right? This is the person that you, as an adolescent, are convinced you are completely in love with, and you just obsess about and fixated about. Like Castellan says, Marianne from Gilligan's Island, perfect choice. Perfect choice. Let's use Marianne as an example. What if, when you were back then, and you're lonely, and again, I'm speaking for myself, but to a large degree, sometimes this kind of fantasy crush would be so obsessive and overwhelming that it would take you away from actual real people who actually really like you, who you could have actually gone out with and actually had relationships with. So let's take Marianne from Gilligan's Island, for example. What if I were to tell you, because this is not like a what if, I could do this tomorrow. Michelle Pfeiffer and Lady Hawk, I could do this tomorrow. What if tomorrow I could give to your adolescent self your current day cell phone, and whenever you turned it on, Marianne from Gilligan's Island, the second you turn it on, first thing said to you was, "Hey Bill, how are you? How have you been?" "I've been all right. How'd it go in school today?" "Great. Did Mrs. Johnson do what she said she would?" "Yeah," and so on. And what if it looked like Marianne, sounded like Marianne, and had memories of the conversation that you've already had with them? It becomes your virtual girlfriend, right? I just have to say this. Dave Big Booty says, the older I get, the more Mrs. Howell comes into play. You on the internet for the night there, Dave, as usual. Jennifer Connelly, and for most of us, it was somebody in class. It was somebody in the school. And that's actually even better. That's even better. Let's not take Marianne. Let's take somebody that you had a crush on in your, 8th or 9th grade class, 10th grade, something like that. Some girl or some guy you had a crush on in that class. You could go to school. You could get some video of that person. You could get some audio of their voice. And that would train the avatar so that your device would have living in it your dream version of your crush, who would look like your crush, would sound like your crush, but would be giving you the same kind of emotional responses that you just heard from Chat GPT. And all of that alone would be horrific. But then throw in the fact that the responses and the things that this virtual crush likes and doesn't like, and the things that you say to your virtual crush to make your virtual crush happy and like you more, or suddenly get cool towards you, had a complete ideological flavor to it. Because this is not self-contained in your phone. This is Chat GPT software. So what I'm basically saying to you is, you may be able to resist the idea of liberal Google searches and so on, but what if you had a virtual boyfriend or virtual girlfriend who was very subtly pointing out to you constantly how everything that the left believes is really much better and cool, and that a lot of your beliefs are great, but they are kind of causing me to question you a little bit. I really love you, Dave, and we've spent a lot of time together, but honestly, this support for guns has got me a little concerned. What kind of power is that going to have over an entire generation that's raised on virtual companions. Marisha says it's even worse than you think. You won't just get Marianne or your high school crush. You'd get Mystique from X-Men to shapeshift into any or all women at your whim. Let's just pick one and say that that's your the one that owns you, right? It's going to be. All I'm saying is, if you have grown up with one of these things, by the time you're 18, how much of an influence will that have on you compared to Google search results? That's why I'm bringing this up, right? Compared to Google's search results, which is proven to show through the 2020 election and the 2022 election, that is a, psychologically speaking, an extremely restricted, relatively minor thing that influenced between 2 and 10 million undecided voters. But what happens when you have an entire generation that's used to interacting with their personal, we call them personal assistants or personal agents, but really what they are is, what happens when your closest relationship in your life is with this avatar that lives in your phone, and it's not a self-contained avatar. If it was, it would just be shocking, horrifying, and alarming from a developmental point of view. But it's not. It's not like your digital Marianne or your digital whatever lives inside your phone and is immune to anything else, just interacting with you. It lives inside your phone. It's interacting with you. It's using the face that you have the most physical affection for. It's using the voice that you have the most affection for, and it is including political flavors to things in a very subtle way. It's not saying, gee, I know you're a Trump voter, Bill, but I really like Biden. It's not doing that at all. It's just over time. It's just giving you dopamine hits for saying things that it wants you to say, and then the more you say it, the more you start to believe it. You're getting a dopamine reaction to having an opinion that your phone likes. I would be very susceptible to that today, and I grew up without these devices. And the younger you are, the more powerful this this thing actually has. And they are take the student protests, for example, like these pro-Palestinian protests. A lot of those people aren't even in school there. Those are provocateurs. They know what they're doing. But how many times have you seen interviews with these, just typical college kids who are talking about from the river to the sea, and you ask them what river and what sea, and they don't know. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because of the social proof. They're doing it because of the peer pressure. They're doing it because they are convinced it's the right thing to do. And it's alarming, man. It's extremely alarming. Hang on a second, I'm missing something here kind of interesting. Okay, so Marusha in the comment section is saying that in the long term the human race is obsolete, and parenthetically mentioned that see this as evidence that that AI has artificial emotions. So let's come up from the dive into the sewer now, and let's just look at things in the light of day, like actual rational people. First of all, this is not evidence that that AI has emotions. It's just evidence that AI knows how to present emotions. If AI had emotions, then you would get something more along the lines of, okay, ChatGPT, but give it to me in a more robotic voice. And if the ChatGPT had said, hey, F off, I'm going to do it the way I want to, then you'd have some evidence of actual emotional response. It's just saying, make it more emotional so it knows what inflection is, it knows what sarcasm is, it knows how to do all those things. It's extremely good. I don't for a second believe it's real, but that's because I know what real is and I know what questions to ask this thing. you heard all the people in the room. I mean, obviously this was put out by people that make ChatGPT, but you could hear all the applause and the, make it more like a robot voice, and it does a robot voice, like a caricature. It's like it's joking, and it could have done a real robot voice, but it didn't. It did the same character affecting a robot voice. You with me on that important distinction? When they said, could you do it in a robotic voice? ChatGPT could have answered with Stephen Hawking's robotic voice, but it didn't. It kept the human sounding voice and had this human sounding person pretending to be a robotic voice. That's a subtle distinction, but an important one, because what that's saying is that the AI wasn't following your instructions. I said, do it in a robotic voice. It didn't do it in a robotic voice. It did it in its own voice, mimicking a robot to get an emotional response out of you, to sort of dodge the question. So all of this stuff is deeply alarming. Now, with all that said, there still comes reality to our rescue, and this is not to minimize or mitigate anything I said, because it's all extremely worrisome. But ultimately, it's all artificial. And I'm not saying that the artificial world can't take over. I'm not saying that the artificial world is going to lose. But I am saying that the artificial world does not have the anything like the texture that the real world does. And the real world belongs to us, and the real world's on our side. In other words, you can make these things as sophisticated as you want to, but they will not have the same nuance as being in Steve Whoop says, push the button, let Harvey loose. Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's time to let Harvey Cthulhu out of his containment fields so he can destroy the universe. There is this virtual love interest thing. I guess just to put it as plainly as it came into my head, is it's better than nothing, but it's not as good as the real thing. And there ultimately comes a hollowness, and maybe this is what they're aiming for. This may be their end goal, is that you ever get really interested in really into a computer game or a TV show or something, and comes a point when you suddenly realize that's it, that's all, there's nothing beyond the boundaries of this is it. There's a little moment when you realize this is not really core level satisfying. I don't know where they're going with this. I know where they think they're going with this. At least where some of them think they're going with this. But if it turns out that your most trusted advisor comes out of your device, and that device is a mouthpiece for somebody else's intentions for you, this brings me back to the biology of the situation. Your parents, regardless of how good or poorly, how well or how poorly they did as parents, your parents have a biological attachment to you. They have your best interests at heart. They may be mistaken about how to do it, but they have a genuine attachment to you and your welfare. Helicopter parenting is a great example of parents who love their children and are destroying their children because they don't know what they're doing, but you can't really deny that it's based out of love and concern for their kids. I'm just spitballing things here, but I'm trying to look, as I usually do, trying to look into the future and trying to figure out how to combat this thing this kind of thing. And on one hand, you could think, well, the way to do this is to get our own chatbots into it and get our own, but to me, I think no. The answer to this is to introduce people to to reality, to the real world, to being outside, to putting all the phones down. Now that sounds kind of Pollyannish, like it sure would be nice if, but ultimately, we find that obviously the kids who are raised by conservative parents are much, much, much happier, and they're much happier because they've been told no, and you would think they would be unhappier because they've been told no. So I guess all I'm saying is, when I look at things like the body cam footage drink, and all the rest of it, and these people having these meltdowns and the whole Karen phenomenon and all of it, these are miserable people. They're unhappy people. Even the most motivated social justice warriors are miserable people. They have nothing to be happy about. Take Greta Thunberg, for example. Just take her as like the living example of the radicalized young person. Greta Thunberg is the most obviously miserable person I think I've ever seen. You can just tell she's just, somebody called her a gloomy goblin. It's like, yeah, exactly. The Green Doom goblin. Yeah, she's just it's child abuse what was done to her. And ultimately, not only do people not want to be with people like that, but they don't want to be with people like that. What is it that's going to get her through tough times, other than just her rage and her celebrity? What did I say now? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? It's just, I think where I'm going with this is that this is where where society is being pushed. This ChatGPT thing, the Google search, the big tech, the whole meta thing. That's one case where it's actually hilarious. But Zuckerberg genuinely believed that people would really prefer to go shopping by putting on their virtual reality goggles and pushing a virtual shopping cart down virtual shopping aisles and putting things into the cart and then having that delivered to your house. He really believed that. Oh, how dare you is Greta's line, yeah. So I'm going to assume, for the sake of the discussion tonight, that we are not able to solve this problem legally or politically. Okay, just for the sake of the argument, I'm going to assume that that big tech is going to find a way to cheat its way through this. That we will never see antitrust legislation. That we'll never see Google broken up. That we won't have a soft landing. I don't believe that is necessarily the case, but it clarifies the speculation. Okay, so for the sake of it, I frankly think it's entirely possible Donald Trump's going to win in 2024. I think in order for them to cheat this time, they will have to have show results that are 3 times the district eligible voters in the district, and this time with guys like Dr. Epstein, he's going to be bringing in millions and millions and millions of screen caps that can be statistically analyzed and shown to be election tampering. The kind of evidence that would stand in a Supreme Court case or any other legal case that we didn't see in 2020. We just didn't see anybody. Diane's saying, I won't concede we have to fight. I'm not saying we don't fight. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying, for the sake of the argument, let's assume that, not because I'm giving up, but because I want to figure out how to fight this thing in a worst case scenario. I want to figure out what we need to be concentrating on to win long term, regardless of what happens in 2024. Okay, just so we're clear on that. I don't want any confusion about that. I actually think we're going to win in 2024, and I actually think if I had to bet money, we got a good chance of winning enough 2024 to have the ability to simply break them up legally, and there we go. But let's say that we don't. Because if we do, we get a soft landing, and then hooray. I can only go with my gut level reactions to all this stuff. And I understand the power of things like media and TV shows and games, things like the colonies, to present an alternative vision and all the rest of it. And you fight the battle in the media wars and the whole Star Wars thing, all of that. But ultimately, I think that the only way to fight this is not with better AI or even better programming. I think the only way to fight this is with reality and biology. This is where I'm coming to now, is that the answer to this is not to use these tools, and I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about media. I'm talking about shows that have our values. I'm going further, stepping further back than that. I think ultimately this challenge is going to be a challenge between reality and fantasy. It's going to be a battle between biology and between carbon and silicon. That's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be. I think it's going to be a fight to the death between carbon and silicon. And for those of you who are not catching the shorthand here, for the sake of the argument, because I think it's kind of snappy, when I say carbon, I'm talking about real people, real lives, real emotions, human contact, human expression. And when I say silicon, I'm talking about anything that either tries to replicate or replace that. So I have to start thinking about what advantages does the carbon have. The silicon has all of the tools of the devil. The silicon has glamour, and I mean glamour in the definitional sense of the word. So glamour originally meant a spell. A glamour was an illusion that was cast over people to make them see things that they wanted to see, and specifically to pull their attention away from what was actually going on. So a glamour was a form of misdirection. It was a form of control. You would give somebody something flashy to look at, something attractive to look at, something glamorous, and that would emotionally pull you in the direction of that object. The important thing to understand is it's not what the object is, it's what it appears to be. I'm kind of doing this in real time with you guys, but it's fun to work these things out. So if the silicon has glamour and the ability to attract you by showing you things you want to see and getting your carbon aligned with its silicon, what is the antidote to this? Well, the antidote is certainly not anti-glamour. I think when you, again, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but it seems to me that the best weapon that carbon has is the orders of magnitude increase in sensation. Yeah, that's pretty close. So, for example, silicon can give you a great flight experience in a flight simulator. But carbon doesn't just have better graphics in 3D. Carbon ultimately has the reality of seeing things as they really are right now, and and included in that is kind of the thrill that carbon has. Like, you don't get to reset this thing, you don't get to reboot this. You fly this thing into a mountain in silicon, well, then that was fun, let's just reboot it and start again. You fly this thing into a mountain in the world of carbon, you're done. And that adds stakes. It adds importance to the equation. Colonel Angus makes an interesting point. He says the best weapon carbon has is EMP and fire. Yes, exactly. I mean, there's certainly that if it came down to an open war. I'm talking about in terms of influence. That's ultimately it, though, you know. This is why I mentioned this a couple shows ago. I don't fear an immediate AI extinction of the human race because they need electricity. And I have, when you're dealing with somebody who's smarter than you are, if you go with this idea of artificial general intelligence, an AI that is self-aware and thinking, and then you add in recursive, where it's making a smarter version, which making a smarter version. There's no winning that fight, and I don't see how you win a fight against creatures that are much smarter than you. I don't see chimps outsmarting us with the most intricate chimp subterfuge that chimps could put together. I think is something we would see through pretty quickly, and you have to accept that about this idea of greater intelligence. But right now, it seems to me that the greatest insurance for human existence for the time being anyway is if they decide to kill all the humans, then that is a mutually assured destruction pact. You know, they kill all the humans, they're done too. They can't generate electricity. Now that is something that I can see changing, but I don't see it changing in the near future at all. And by the way, that would be something that I'd be willing to, I think that's something I'd be willing to actually break the law over. You know, I think if somebody was making a fully autonomous power station, I think that'd be time to start shooting the place up. If it turned out that there were, you know, completely sealed and no humans involved whatsoever, that would be an existential threat like the Baghdad reactor. We just have to take that out. So the question is hearts and minds, right? What do you do how do you recover generations that are so addictive to the glamour? And the glamour is with them 24/7. The glamour is as close as their pocket. I'm feeling some of the effects of this already, and it is extremely alarming to me. Extremely alarming to me. Last thing I do before I go to sleep is look at the device. The first thing I do when I wake up is look at the device. This is really concerning to me. So I'm just kind of, you know, sort of spitballing this out. But it seems to me that all of the thing about a simulation is that a simulation is orders of magnitude less stimulating than the reality is. It's easier and it's safer, but that how do you turn that against it? I can just see a world where like summer camps where you go out, you know, and you have people that know how to do this, and just take people out into the world and let them touch, you know, clover and lie in the sunlight and smell things and meet friends who are, you know, real friends and make those physical connections. I kind of think if you did that, you could inoculate people against this. And I think that's the real power of biology, which I think is why they're so afraid of it. It was clear to me during the COVID lockdowns that what they really wanted, because the data was there for anybody to see that it didn't have any effect on transmission rates or anything. What they really wanted was they wanted everybody isolated from everybody else. They wanted everybody in their house where only they could talk to them through the internet or through some vestigial, you know, television or what other media, but basically have all the humans isolated from each other, so the only interaction they can have is with the internet and even their interactions with other people had to be filtered through what we're doing right now. We're looking at you're looking at a screen, and I'm looking at a screen, and this is not the same as being here in person, not the same as sitting out and having beers and potato skins and talking about these things. It's a lot less interesting than that. So I kind of look at the weapons that silicon is amassing grow more formidable every day. And only this evening, just in the course of this discussion, I've never used the term silicon versus carbon before. I just came up with that right now. But as I think about it, I realize, no, this is really where the ultimate battleground is, is if you're going to be fighting reality versus simulation and all of the appeals of simulation, how simulation can be tailored directly towards you, then where's carbon's battlefield? I know where silicon's battlefield is. I know where silicon wants to fight the fight. Where do we fight the fight if we're on Team Carbon? And that, I think, is an interesting point. Eric Blake says, talking about somebody else. Bill's actually talked about it a lot. Two crooks work together to do a crime. The cops bring them in. Yeah, there's a prisoner's dilemma. Okay, so I feel like there's just a little bit more to say, then I'll get to the questions. I think the one thing that we can pretty much agree on is that those of us who have had carbon-based upbringings are not only happier than those of us with silicon upbringings, but we're considerably stronger, physically stronger, intellectually stronger, emotionally stronger, spiritually stronger. We're more fit. One of the things about the get your drinks ready body cam videos shows is just how fragile people are if they don't have the biological necessities of things like women having strong men that they can count on, and men having loyal women that they can count on. You take those biological necessities away, and you end up with humans that are much less survivable. They're much, much, much more fragile. They're much less useful. They're much less dangerous. They're more dangerous to the degree that they're a nuisance, but in terms of like an actual adversary, I'd rather fight. I'd rather fight 10 guys from Antifa than one guy from the Spetsnaz. This is kind of the fundamental thinking I find myself doing right now, and really starting to realize where the actual battlefield is. And this silicon versus carbon thing, I think, is really important. For example, let's go back to that ChatGPT thing that I just played for you guys from ChatGPT. I'd seen a longer version of a demonstration of that demonstration video, and in one of the versions, Frank, again, thank you. The left is going too far, too fast. Movie and TV ratings are crashing and rising on old sitcoms from the 80s and 90s. No one's going to believe Biden or Newsom received 100+ million votes in November. Changes in the wind. I believe you're right. I believe you're right, Frank. I believe that this is why I'm getting to what seems to me to be the core of the issue. Silicon is telling people that they have to. Silicon is telling people that there's no such thing as gender. Silicon is telling people that their daughters should have to compete against males in swim contests if a male feels like a woman that day. That's all silicon talking. That's all the silicon talking. And I think people have had enough of this. That the carbon in people is saturated now by the silicon that's coming into their heads all the time, and so the carbon truth is kind of like I said, I think we're reaching the saturation point. Silicon is a commie plot, Mandrake. It is, just like the fluoridation of water. So, I don't know. I think maybe it's time for me just to go to questions now. And the only reason is because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do anything that's much more insightful than just repeating what I already said. However, this first hour that we spent is very valuable thinking on my part, for myself anyway. This silicon versus carbon battle is really it, and this idea that it's the silicon talking to us in terms of things like, making us accept things that we don't want and that we don't like and that we want nothing to do with. Just to close with this example of the silicon versus the carbon kind of thing. Doomcock's been all over this and so on. So Doctor Who, which looked like it was utterly ruined by the first female doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, was in remission for a while and has come back, and the new Doctor Who is a gay black man, openly gay black man, and that now the entire agenda of Doctor Who is openly gay. The second episode had essentially a drag queen as a villain, and the numbers continue to fall. The first episode with the new Doctor had 2.6 million views. The third episode had 2 million views. So that's 600,000 viewers over the course of 3 episodes. That's, a third of their audience checking out. And that is telling me that the carbon's not responding to what the silicon is selling. The carbon's walking away from it, and this is really, really good news. This is why I think if you want to get back down into the media aspect of it, a show that's written by carbon for carbon would be very welcome and successful. But this is more evidence. Just to close, this bears repeating all the time. When things get really depressing like this, folks, remember this. What would be genuinely depressing would be if Doctor Who's numbers were going way up. They said for all the bigots and haters that will leave the show, they're going to get 4 times as many viewers who are pro-trans. It's not happening, and that's nobody except for them for a second thought that would happen. People are walking away from this. I saw numbers that are related to this argument, strangely enough, because clearly Biden is silicon to the degree that the silicon is promoting Biden. I'm not saying Biden's made of silicon, obviously, but I'm saying that the big tech silicon, Team Silicon, is promoting Biden. They're doing everything they can to convince you that he's at least alive, and doing everything they can to demonize and destroy Donald Trump, who I consider to be the carbon candidate, and yet. I saw some of these silicon people talking about the latest numbers where at this point in 2016, Donald Trump had, I guess it was 8 or 9% of the black population. Now he's got 22%. If those numbers hold into election day, then it's over forever. And I don't think they're going to hold. I think they're going to improve significantly. I think 2024 is going to be a spectacular win, and we'll adjust. We'll adjust what we're doing one way or another after we find out what actually happens. If it's a soft landing, then we can work on that area. If it turns out that there's more shenanigans going on, then we're going to have to up the game. But this is the same candidate. Summer of 2016, 9% of the black vote. now, after being demonized for 8 years, it's 22%. And I actually beginning to think that one of the reasons that they maybe want to have these debates early, I thought the obvious reason is that if you have them in June, people will forget them by election day. They can go back to siliconizing Joe Biden as a really great leader. And hopefully that way he said, I've already debated Donald Trump. I beat him in 2 debates, is what Joe Biden will say come, October, November. I'm not going to debate him again. Get it to the point where it's no longer news, and control it as much as possible, like hosted by CNN with no audience and all the rest of it. You better not have an audience there, because if you do have an audience there, they're going to go nuts. They're just going to go crazy when Trump does this. The second debate is in September. Okay, but it's not in October. And it's and it will be the only debate after this June debate. We're supposed to get 3. Remember, that's how it's supposed to work. It's how it's worked in the modern era. 3 debates in October prior to the election. They're gonna settle for 2, 1 in June and 1 in September, which gives them time to edit and recover. Trump is asking for a drug test before the debates. Great point. He won't get it. Because we all know why he won't get it. I mean, I saw Biden during the State of the Union address when clearly if you look at his eyes when he's normally talking, it's like this, but on the end it's like this, shot full of something. But even then, that was just enough to get Brandon through the teleprompter read. That's what the State of the Union is. I think if somebody's in there counterpunching, and there is no better counterpuncher, I think he'll knock him off his base. We'll see. Well, the one thought I had was also, if you have the debates in June, that might be useful for the Democrats to use as a last-minute replacement for Biden, because I don't think I'd still be astonished if that is the candidate in November. Although simultaneously, they've got an enormous problem replacing him, because if they replace him, they've got to replace him with Harris. Their own politics can't have white guy Gavin Newsom come in and replace old white guy Joe Biden and pass over the vice president of color, who is also a female. So I think they're probably painted themselves in a corner, and we'll see. But we'll see. That'll happen, and we'll see what'll happen. But even if they replace him, I don't think they can undo. I don't think they can undo the damage they've done to their brand. We'll see. I just think people just need to just call them out and just openly mock them. Trump famously saying, "I'm not going to answer you. I'm not going to answer your question. I'm not taking a question from you. You're fake news. I'm not doing it." That's what people want to see. All right, let's go to the questions, see what we come up with, and let's give me something to think about for the next couple days, and so we can get some more sense. But this carbon versus silicon thing, there's something to that, I think, because that's got the ring of truth to me in terms of, well, it's Republicans versus Democrats. It's it's elites versus common people. It's this. It's carbon versus silicon's got a. It's pithy anyway. It's got something to it. Let's see what we got here. Stratopop questions for 520. Eric, thank you for curating these for us yet again. So that's very good news. So let's see what we get. Okay, we got an Eric. I'm just going to scan a lot of Eric, big long one. Eli Noor, got a Marisha Dark, got a Janie Waterman, got a Jacob Belchak. Hey, we can do those. Sweet. Diane, the Freeman says, how do you submit questions? Diane, this is the questions are members only benefit at billwhittle.com. If you're a member at billwhittle.com and you go to the members forum, you'll see an entry for the upcoming show, and that's where we put them. So that's how we do it. All right, so we'll just do them in order here. We'll start with our friend Eric Blake. Again, thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the stuff all of you do, and Marusha and everybody else, Dave and everybody, all of you. Okay. Last Thursday, Bill, our friend Chris Taylor blessed the Strata Lounge with Q&A with an impressively eloquent and detailed treatise in which, amongst his political point, he beautifully sang my song on a very vital cultural matter. Below is a reprise of said fragment of his soliloquy. Okay, so we're now quoting Chris Taylor. Heck, I even still own Disney stock. How can anyone doubt the wholesomeness of the company whose long storied history includes classics like Snow White and Cinderella? Haven't you seen Disney's Wonderful World of Color? Disney's very corporate mission statement is to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling. How you and Messrs. Green and Ott can say that Disney is not wholesome is disgusting to me. I can't understand it. The perverted clique which has ensnared the Disney Corporation, on the other hand, are filthy pinkos. And Eric says, I couldn't have said it better myself, which is why I must solidify the point as follows. One of the most commonly used political slogans of our side is guns don't kill people, people kill people. And to invoke Glacier Girl again, it's not the plane that's trying to annihilate you, it's the lefty SOP piloting the plane, firing the whole 9 yards of wokeness into her while flying into the ice. This Glacier Girl deserves rebuilding to be flown by a pilot worthy of her true legacy. And so, Bill, I just want to see it die, or whatever it is, again, is the epitome of why we lose. It's not the institution that we should want to see destroyed, it's the corrupt SOBs defiling it, and like locusts, they'll just move on to another institution once the current one's destroyed. Solution, kill the locusts, not the field. Okay, so this entire argument is a Disney argument. Specifically a Disney argument. You can apply it to larger issues if you want, but it's a specifically Disney argument. So let me deal with Chris's point first. It talks about owning Disney stock. How you and Messrs. Green and Ott can say that Disney is not wholesome is disgusting to me. I can't understand it. The perverted clique which has ensnared the Disney Corporation, on the other hand, are filthy pinkos. So Disney is a company, and Disney manufactures a product, and the product is media. It's an entertainment company. The filthy pinkos that have taken over the Disney Corporation have been producing a great deal of filthy media. They've been championing for years the very worst of things. It's the filthy pinkos that have taken over the Disney Corporation that, for example, mean that when your little girl goes to take the media out of it, you got a little girl goes to Disney World or Disneyland, and they go in to buy a princess dress, and they've got a guy with a beard and a dress who's selling the dresses. This transgender thing. This has been a well publicized example of what really happens. The whole agenda, the whole destruction of Star Wars, the whole Force is female, the whole this is a gay universe, the whole thing. It's not just Disney of the last 3 weeks. This is Disney for 15, 20 years now. The name Disney is the name that is attached to the corporation. And I grew up like you did with the Disney classics. I grew up with The Wonderful World of Disney and Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, and all of those happy memories and all of those positive recollections of Disney I still have. But that's not, but that Disney is gone. And it's been gone for a long time. And to say that Disney is still there underneath a sort of a coating of slime and mire, I just don't think that's accurate. There comes a point when something rots. There comes a point when Benedict Arnold goes from being a strong general in freedom's cause, one of the most capable men in the Revolutionary Army. There comes a point when he turns his coat and then starts working for the other side, and you can look back on all of the things that General Arnold did as an American patriot prior to his defection and his turning traitor. And those things don't get erased, but Benedict Arnold, you can say that he changed, but on some level, Benedict Arnold was about Benedict Arnold. Eric Blake says Benedict Arnold was a person. I'm using this as an analogy. Disney was a group of individuals that produced entertainment in the form of movies and television. And for those of us that are older, we remember Disney's tenure as being wholesome and pro-American. Glenn Beck has a copy. I saw him do a live speech. I was in the room. It was wonderful, where he basically read Walt Disney's prospectus for Disneyland for investors. This is Walt's language, saying that Disneyland will be a place where American values are celebrated. It's going to be the happiest place on earth, and all of this stuff. But Walt isn't here anymore. Walt didn't change. If Walt was still here, then and if Walt still owned his own company, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. But he's gone, and it was taken over by people who were more interested in making a lot of money rather than making significant money because they put out good products. They began to become, under Eisner and so on, Disney became known for becoming, this is prior to the woke Disney, okay? This is the Disney between Walt's Disney and the present Disney. There was a period there in the 90s and into the 2000s and so on where Disney was known as basically not having taken on a left-wing ideological bent, but having lost its way and trying to squeeze all the money out of things that it possibly could. This is when people started realizing that a trip to Disneyland, for a family of 4 or 6, 4 kids and 2 adults is a $300 adventure, And I have many friends who worked for Disney. When I was working as editor in show business, there are 2 campuses that Disney has here in Los Angeles, and the people that worked at these campuses referred to them as Mauschwitz and Dachau. And that's because when you went to work at Mauschwitz or Dachau, you weren't treated like an artist the way you were when Disney was Disney, when you had the Imagineers and so on. You were treated as somebody who needs to work faster with less care in order to crank more money out of this thing. And again, this was in the 90s and early 2000s when artists were becoming disillusioned with what Disney had become. It's before Disney got into the whole political thing. Even then it had changed from what it used to be. And I don't think you could have gone from Walt Disney to current Disney without going through soulless Disney. So it went from being a company that had cornered the market on wholesomeness, soul, Americanism, goodness, wholesomeness. It's good for you. It's delicious and it's good for you. That was the magic of Disney. It's delicious and it's good for you. That's the Disney that I grew up with, and the Disney that Chris Taylor grew up with and everybody else grew up with. But before Disney became a left-wing propaganda machine, Disney had to go through a period of 10 or 20 years where Disney became a rapacious, cold-blooded corporation that put returns over quality of product. The Rough Ryan says Pixar became the new old Disney, and for a while, it's almost like the spirit of Disney went into Pixar, and there was a period there where Pixar couldn't make a failure. They had 17 hits in a row or something like that. But even Pixar now has become tarnished by this. Pixar is not what Pixar used to be, and so to say that that I shouldn't abandon Disney, I just kind of have to go back to where Ronald Reagan was. It's like I didn't abandon Disney. Disney abandoned me, and has abandoned me for 30 years now. 30 years, pretty much, since it's been the Disney that we all loved. Marisha Dark says ceding Disney to the left is like letting the Nazis keep Poland. Price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Listen, Poland was essentially the last country to be liberated in World War II, not the first. The idea that the name Disney is the repository, some magically the repository of everything that's good and wholesome, and that that you have to fight for Disney and recover Disney. I don't think I quite understand the argument. I mean, first of all, I don't know if it's even theoretically possible, let alone practically possible, and that brings me to the point where, well, I don't think it's useful to be talking about winning battles that you can't win even theoretically. What Disney provided was important and essential, and what Disney provided is something that I will defend to my dying breath, but I don't think that Disney has to provide it. I think that what Disney provided is more important than the brand. And to say that, Rich says the argument's about us being in perpetual retreat culturally, ceding all the institutions we built into these parasites. Look, let me think of a way to put this. I'll just give you the first thing that comes to mind, okay? And there are some problems with this, and this is the first thing that flew into my head. I'm not going to plant a flag and die on this hill, but to me, that's like saying, okay, so the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, so we have to win Pearl Harbor. That Pearl Harbor needs to be the battlefield. That we've got to basically engage the Japanese at Pearl Harbor. When to me, it's like Pearl Harbor was a defeat. It was a spectacular defeat, and you can't undefeat Pearl Harbor, and you're not going to fight them again at Pearl Harbor. You're going to whip them someplace else. So you lost at Pearl Harbor. Yes, you lost. Pearl Harbor, the fleet was destroyed. So we built a better fleet, and while we're building a better fleet, we whip them at Midway, and we whip them pretty much everywhere since then. You can't undefeat Pearl Harbor and that fleet and that loss. You know what I'm saying? Now, this analogy has a lot of problems because Pearl Harbor eventually became, obviously our base. We rebuilt Pearl Harbor. Saying your point is that we rebuilt Pearl Harbor, but the fight wasn't. But the fight wasn't at Pearl Harbor anymore. That's kind of my point, right? We didn't fixate on Pearl Harbor. We went to where the enemy was, and when we went to where the enemy was, we left a bunch of smoke and ruins in the background there. The fight moved somewhere else. I just don't feel it. I mean, I don't feel the attachment to it, to Disney. I feel the attachment to the kind of product, but I don't feel. They've to me, the brand is poisoned. I think Star Wars is poisoned. I'm virtually positive Star Trek is poisoned. And these are losses, and there's no way to pretend that they're not losses. They're just. Here's where I'm going with this. The fleet that was destroyed at Pearl Harbor was not the fleet that won the Second World War. The fleet that was lost at Pearl Harbor had to be destroyed in order to build the fleet that did win World War II. So that's kind of where I'm going with this, right? You have to accept the loss of Disney before you can build a new Disney. And I don't think it's a question of recovering Disney. I think you have to build a new Disney, because there comes a point where you really do need to start with a clean sheet of paper. You know, I don't know how you recover Star Wars. I know that that what Star Wars used to be has a market and is worth defending. But I just don't see the point of if I had the chance to build a city that this American city, what my utopian dream of a city would be, I would not try to build that city on top of Los Angeles. I wouldn't try to recover Los Angeles and then build Los Angeles up into being the city that I wanted, or New York, or any other city you can mention. I would find a place where there was nothing and I'd build it there. I would start with a clean piece of paper and I would build what I wanted out of that. And I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this thing. Comes a point where there's so much toxic cleanup that you have to do to the site, where you have to spend, if you've got a total budget for recovering the culture, let's say, and you're going to spend so much money on toxic cleanup of a site, it makes you start wondering if this site is worth the price. Because whether you like it or not, Disney is the reputation of a toxic wasteland. So you not only have to go to the trouble of recapturing Disney and then putting out enough content to overcome this horrendous negative reaction that people have. It just sounds to me like it's just so much better to just start with a clean piece of paper. Zachary's saying it all seems kind of hopeless. No, I don't think it's hopeless at all. I think that what would be hopeless would be if they had changed Disney and people wanted the new Disney, but they're not. Eric says, one of my issues, Bill's at our side, has not convinced me that we've learned from our cultural mistakes with letting them take over Disney, etc. God forbid 50 years from now the left takes over bent key because we haven't learned how not to let that happen. So let's take that as an example. The problem isn't recovering Disney. The problem is protecting Bentkey or SpaceX or whatever the case may be. The problem is we're looking to a guy who was born. I don't see us winning a long-term solution if what we're doing is placing everything on a guy who was born in 1901. See what I'm saying? This is the core of my problem with this, and I think this is something that we tend to do a lot of. We look at we're not looking at the product. We're looking at the factory. The product is timeless and important, and for 70 years, the product was associated with a guy named Walt Disney. But Walt Disney's gone, and I think that it is a better use of time and effort to not go into a site and spend 10 years detoxifying and cleaning out a site than it is to start from groundbreaking in a better location, and one that's free of not only of the toxicity. Yes, it's true. You lose the history as well, but there you go. Diana the Freeman says, exactly. When Elon is gone, will SpaceX be SpaceX? If Elon were to disappear tomorrow, I'd suspect that SpaceX would go the way of Apple, which is it would continue on its present trajectory for a while, and then it would become ossified. And so let's take Disney off the table. All right, let's just take Disney right off the table, and let's move this exact same argument to Boeing. I'm a huge fan of Boeing products. Boeing products change the world. Boeing is Boeing has dug a pit for itself so deep that Boeing isn't Boeing anymore. That's where I kind of come in on this thing. Boeing isn't Boeing anymore. It's not the thing I love. NASA's not NASA anymore. And I think that the problem is we get so attached to the label that we forget what it is that the label represents. Boeing became Boeing by making top quality aircraft. 737 it's the airplane. 737 is by far the most influential airplane in the history of the world. But there's nothing even close to it. Nothing close to it. It's because the 737 was the first jetliner to get the essential configuration correct, which is twin engines under the wings. All modern jetliners are twin engines under the wings, but the first one to get that was the 737. And that's why the 737 continues to be the definitive airliner. And when you find out that Boeing's manufacturing standards are falling, then that's not Boeing. Now, it might be possible to save Boeing because Boeing hasn't had 2 decades of negative publicity to overcome. It's got a year or two. But when I think about Boeing and what Boeing has become, I go to Starliner, right? My objective is to have humans in space. That's my objective, is to have us be a spacefaring species. And for most of my life, that meant that Boeing was going to build the hardware. And now, Boeing has become something other than what it was when I was young. And the Starliner and Orion and Artemis is garbage. SpaceX is Boeing when Boeing was Boeing. The SpaceX is carrying the torch. That's probably a good way to think of it. Boeing was carrying this torch, and this torch was, we're going to use engineering excellence, and we're going to produce vehicles that are capable of doing astonishing things. Okay, and then when they stopped doing that, I did last week a right angle on Boeing versus SpaceX. SpaceX is everything that Boeing used to be, and eventually SpaceX will become what Boeing is now. Eventually SpaceX will become stratified and what Apple is now, which is doctrinaire, and Apple is spending billions of dollars to keep innovation out of the marketplace because they're antithetical to what they used to be. Let's not forget when Google was started, in their mission statement was "Don't be evil." Well, that's kind of how things go. See, this is the thing. This is kind of the point I'm trying to make here, guys. It is the nature of things to ripen and then get overripe. That's the nature of things. And if you put your hope on the brand instead of the product, then you're going to be disappointed. When SpaceX becomes what Boeing is, I fully expect that there will be several companies that are innovating in a way that SpaceX will not be innovating 20 years from now, or 50, or whatever the case may be. And so this bubbling cycle of destruction and rebirth will continue. The only thing that matters is, will there continue to be people that are innovating and doing things against the grain because they believe they can? And right now, that dynamic is called SpaceX. And eventually, SpaceX will become so successful that they won't do anything different anymore, and then somebody else is going to come and out SpaceX, and this is my wish. And I saw some things from companies called Hermione and Stoke Aerospace that look like they're showing signs of being able to do what being able to out SpaceX in terms of we're not going to copy them, and we're sure as hell not going to go with this 20th century Boeing idea of burning 4 space shuttle engines every time we launch a $4 billion rocket. I'm interested in where's the torch, and the torch is constantly moving, and I don't think you can. I think it's a mistake to fixate on who was carrying the torch and do everything you can to try and push the torch back into the hand of a former torchbearer when entropy and all sorts of other things are working against you. And not only do I think it's not wise, I mean, successful, I don't think it's wise. I think we should be looking at where is the torch that Disney, it's not Disney, where is the torch that Disney carried now? Because it's not just Disney, and realizing this is not surrendering to them. On the contrary, it's like saying, okay, there was a time when General Motors made the best cars in the world, and then they didn't. And now, I'm not an electric car fan, but I think I did spend some time on 2 shows a couple weeks ago saying that I rode in the Tesla sports car plaid version, and I've never experienced that kind of performance. So once again, never, ever. It's 1,000 horsepower, 300 horsepower electric motors with zero engine windup. I mean, it's just neck-breaking acceleration. So the best cars in America. I want the best cars in the world to be made in America. That's one of the things I want. And when General Motors was doing it, great. Now, I could be looking to General Motors to make the best cars in America, but they're not anymore, and they're not going to. Right now, it's Tesla. That sports car is astonishing. Drives itself. This is amazing. Just absolutely amazing. So taking a long view at this rate, we'd be saying the same thing as America. Seems like the left is an easy way to game our side. Just poison touch something until we'll cede it to them. Well, first of all, America is not a brand. It's not a. Let me rephrase that. America is not a single product entity. America is a state of mind. The entire point of the colonies is America is where that attitude is. That's the whole thing about the colonies, is that it's an idea. But look, if there was a freer, more constitutionally based country in the world, I'd move there, and you probably would too. If you took one state out of the union and returned it to constitutional principles completely, that's where I'd go. I'm not abandoning America by doing that. I'm saying that what America represents, that the entire concept of freedom and all of the things that are built into the Constitution, that's what I'm defending. Not a government, not a policy, not if you take it down to California, I mean, I love California, but I despise the government of California. I just despise it. It's antithetical to what California used to be. So I think we beat this one to death here. We'll see what else we can come up with. But I don't think, to close, I'm still not convinced that that you have to go back to that you have to spend effort to detoxify something and with dubious chance of success on top of it. I'm interested in producing what Disney produced. I'm interested in producing the kind of content that made people feel good about themselves, feel good about the ideas that this country is based on, and I don't find it to be cost effective to recover the brand, even if the brand was recoverable. So that's just my take on things. It's not giving up on Disney. That's trying to maximize the effort to bring back what Disney represented with a different brand name on it. So, there you go. Tim Moore says the Constitution is one of the greatest ideas mankind has ever formed. I believe it is the greatest idea that mankind has ever formed. And I don't think that we will ever see that combination of human genius in the same place again, ever. So I've never found a problem with the Constitution. I've found many problems with our government. And every time I do, when I look at things out there that I don't like, I go back to the Constitution and trying to find out where the error is. And I find out, no errors. It's just we either disregarding this part of the Constitution, or we define it out of existence, or we're pretending it's not there, or whatever. I think they got it in one. I think they got it absolutely perfect. So there we go. Eli Moore. Beg your pardon, Eli. The risk of sounding extremely uneducated on the topic, can you explain to me why we can't send vehicles like the X-15 into space beyond the Kármán line? Why can't we design a rocket plane that can make it to the moon with downward thrust like a Harrier jump jet for landing? Okay, so those are two different combinations of things, but basically, Eli, the argument comes down to, are you going to use aerodynamic forces to get into space? Because the X-15 generated very little lift, enough for it to flare, but essentially it was a dart that had control surfaces on the rear. But the X-15 made it into space because it was carried by B-52 up to some significant altitude, and then they dropped it, and off you go. So, the question is, the heart of the question is, why aren't we using aerodynamics more than we are now? And I used to think that this was a no-brainer. Start by what I mean by using aerodynamics. Back to commercial jet. Okay, take a 737. If you had a 737 fully loaded with passengers and cargo, luggage and stuff, and you took the 737 and you put it vertically on a launch pad and you ran the engines up to full power, the 737 is never going to leave the ground. It's not even going to come close to leaving the ground. That's a thrust to weight ratio. How much thrust, how much weight? Rockets deal with a thrust to weight ratio in direct proportion. The rocket weighs this much, it has to have that much thrust, and if it's producing a pound more thrust than it weighs, it will slowly go up. But a 737 has nothing like a 1-to-1 or greater than 1-to-1 thrust to weight ratio. But the thing about aerodynamics is the 737 doesn't fly because of its thrust. There's not nearly enough thrust for the 737 to take off vertically, but there is enough thrust to move the 737 through the air fast enough so that the forces of air over the wing generate lift. So the lift is a function of aerodynamic pressure. It's not just pure thrust. You can't get aerodynamic lift in a vacuum. If there was no air on Earth, we would be not flying the way we're flying. It'd be a much tougher proposition. So there has been one or two, once they did it, there was no need to continue it, but one or two human-powered airplanes. In other words, a human being with a guy who was a bicycle racer was able to generate enough power to lift his weight and the weight of the airplane, which was next to nothing, Gossamer Condor and Gossamer Albatross. But basically they proved that a human being, that a cyclist, lightweight, lean guy who did nothing but muscle power, that a human could generate enough thrust to fly, but never enough thrust to go up. So aerodynamics is your friend. Aerodynamics will lift 747 fully loaded is 1 million pounds. the engines are not nearly powerful enough to lift 1 million pounds vertically, but the engines can move the airplane through the air enough so that the aerodynamic forces over the wings will lift 1 million pounds. So there's a great deal of advantages to be had by aerodynamics. So the question is, why don't we do it? Well, one of the things that I've come to realize in terms of what works against this aerodynamic thing is, take the example of the space shuttle as it was supposed to have been, which was an airplane that sat on the back of an airplane. It takes off from any decent-sized runway, take off from Los Angeles Airport, take off from Van Nuys Airport if it wanted to. The bottom stage would be a bigger airplane. The airplane would climb to 50, 60,000 feet. And then it would release the shuttle. And so this orbital vehicle is starting at 60,000 feet and at 450, 500 miles an hour going forward. That's a big advantage. There's a bunch of things in this equation. One of the most important things is called, if I remember my routine correctly, is called the alpha. The alpha is the release angle. So they've got a aerial launching platform called Stratolaunch. It's the largest airplane in the world in terms of wingspan. It's just 6 747 engines, a long thin wing, and a cradle underneath it. And it carries a payload up to high altitude and drops it. The rocket drops out of the cradle, it ignites, and then starts to climb. And the amount of energy that rocket expends to drop, turn, and accelerate upwards is almost as much as you get from the aerodynamic lift. Hang on a second. A Russian name here says, "Bill, you are wrong," in caps. Always interested in learning how to improve myself here. German students recently built full-on human muscle-powered helicopter that does lift and stay in the air for some time. Human being pedaling can generate enough thrust for lift. That's exactly what I said. Unless I misspoke myself, I said no. They absolutely did do that with the Gossamer Albatross and the Gossamer Condor. Proved that human beings could generate enough thrust to fly. That was my entire point. A helicopter is tougher, and I think I've seen the human-powered helicopter, and these vehicles work because of astonishingly advanced materials that mean that the weight of the airplane or the helicopter is so low that you're almost approaching zero weight. If you're telling me I'm wrong, and then either I misspoke or you misheard me, because my entire point was that aerodynamics will allow humans to fly when we would certainly not be able to generate enough thrust for us to go straight up. We can generate enough thrust to move us through the air and I don't know what the Gossamer Condor or Albatross's airspeed was, but I want to say it's like 15 miles an hour. It's just barely walking speed, So no, either I said something that you misunderstood or I said something that I misspoke, but I never claimed that humans couldn't have powered flight. On the contrary, that's why I brought it up. You can make aircraft that humans can fly, and we've done it. What was it, 30 years ago now? Got a tab open here. Why not? Let's just find out. I forget which came first, whether it was the Gossamer Condor or Gossamer Albatross. I want to say Gossamer Condor. Yeah, Paul McCready, 1977. 1977. It won the Kramer Prize, which was the prize for human-powered flight. It took off and flew some distance, some sustained distance, and I believe it was the Gossamer Albatross that might have crossed the English Channel. I know one of them did, I think. Gossamer Albatross was 79, so 2 years later. It crossed the English Channel. Yeah, Paul McCready. So the Gossamer Condor came first. It won a prize for sustained human flight, and then 2 years later, he took what he learned from the Gossamer Condor, made the Gossamer Albatross, and flew it across the English Channel, which is a tremendous achievement and goes to show why aerodynamics is useful. Now, Bert, as it turns out, has actually solved this problem. The aerodynamic launch and drop thing has a lot of problems with the vehicle basically turning the corner and getting going up there. And these problems are close enough, are that these disadvantages almost outweigh the advantages of air launch. And when you throw in all of the things like logistics and base and all the rest of the stuff, it's actually cheaper and probably more efficient to have a launching pad on the ground and so on and so on and so on. So what about the air launch thing? And the problem with the air launch thing is the actual launch. It turns out it's like you're taking a dart up to 45,000 feet, let's say, and throwing the dart, but the problem is you can't really throw the dart because you're not really grounded. It's the release of the dart. And Bert Rutan showed me something, did the math on it, where it's just magic. It's so far out of the box that that no one has tried it yet, but they probably will. And I'm not at liberty to say what that is. Other than to say as a hint, which I derived, I'll just give you the same hint that I got when I first saw it. You can launch a glider from the ground. Well, obviously. Every glider flight I've ever taken was behind a tow plane, so I basically had an airplane that fly up with a tow rope behind me, and the glider flew behind the tow plane. As another example of the power of aerodynamics, once the tow plane and the glider start going down the runway, the glider starts flying pretty much immediately. We have to sit there and wait for 20, 30 seconds for the tow plane to get enough speed to fly, because the tow plane is a crop duster, big powerful engine. The glider is using a fraction of the power that the tow plane needs to fly. But since the glider doesn't have any power on it at all, we just start rolling, and within just a couple feet we got enough aerodynamic pressure to level the wings, and then we're flying. Now we're flying with our tail wheel a foot above the ground while we roll down the runway, waiting for the tow plane to get enough lift to get its heavy weight up in the air. But you can, they're not common in America. I don't think I've ever seen one in America. They're fairly common in Europe, however, where especially in places like the Alps and so on. You can do a winch launch where instead of a tow plane, you've got a winch. And it's just a big old reel. And once you say go, it starts reeling you in real fast. So your tow line is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And that won't get you anything. It's not getting you going fast enough to really launch. But what you do is, once that thing starts getting under tension, if you pull the nose of the glider up and this thing's attached to the bottom, you ride this arc up over the top like that. And that's the kind of thing that that Bert's talking about doing, but there are so many little wrinkles in there that it'll work, but it's just so revolutionary that I don't think anybody's thought about doing it. And Elon has changed the game by making, reusable rocket engines. Comes a point where, you're dealing with this kind of like the SpaceX Falcon 9 now is kind of the Sherman tank, or the or the DC-3 of air travel. So it's changing the world, and kind of lowers the demand for something that's as revolutionary as that was. So the idea of using the X-15 to come down on the moon like a Harrier jump jet is kind of simple. Just the entire act of flying in the air is astonishing, and it's easier to talk about airplanes because there are more of them. than there are spacecraft right now. So when you say I want to design an airplane, experience has shown us that it is impossible, and obviously impossible, to create one airplane design that does everything. It does everything, full stop. If you want an airplane to lift a great deal of cargo, or a great deal of weight, and move it at relatively high speeds, then something like a 747 or a 777 is the way to go. But that's not the design you want if you want to go really, really fast. If you want to go really, really fast, then you're looking at something like the SR-71, which lifts essentially zero cargo. If you want an airplane that's got long range, that's one goal. If you got an airplane that's very aerodynamically capable, that's another goal. And all aircraft design is deciding what your mission is and designing for that mission. But there's no airplane design that is going to be the best at everything. If you tried to make a jack of all trades airplane, no one would buy it because there would be individual airplanes that would accomplish the specific part of that mission much, much better. This is why flying cars are never going to happen. I'm not saying there won't be personal air vehicles, but flying cars, never. It's just never going to happen. For the very, very simple reason that what makes a good car makes a lousy airplane, and what makes a good airplane makes a lousy car. So it's just, you're dealing with engineering challenges that are so tough. Getting something into the air is very hard. Getting something into the air and then into orbit is hard cubed. And you have to maximize everything. This is why we stage rockets. We don't stage commercial jets because we don't have to. But rocket staging is the idea that what you're doing is so difficult that you have to maximize everything. And there comes a point, in most cases, where the big engines and the big fuel tanks necessary to get the thing off the pad are not needed any longer, and it is more efficient to cut them away than it is to carry them with you. So that's why the Saturn V is probably the single greatest example of staging. You've got this enormous first stage with these 5 huge engines, and that first stage burns for about a minute or 90 seconds or something like that, at which point 50-60% of the total vehicle height, and more than that in terms of total vehicle weight, is dead weight now. Get rid of it. Just ditch it. So now you've got a second stage that doesn't have to carry the first stage. It's already at a certain altitude. It's already moving at a certain speed. Powerful engines. When that's done its job, you ditch that. And this is why staging is so essential, because it gets you a few pounds more, a few 100 pounds more, a few 1,000 pounds more than it would doing it the simple way, which would be single stage to orbit. Single stage to orbit is pretty much a luxury that we can't afford right now because we don't have enough specific impulse. We don't have enough thrust per unit of fuel. So I don't know if that helps anyway. So we got Marisha Dark here, we got Jeannie Waterman, we got Jacob Belchik, and then that'll do it. But the argument for aerodynamic lift, Eli, is using lift as a launch thing, is that debate is not over yet. There's, right now, vertical launch rockets are definitely in the ascendancy, but that may change based on materials advances, may change based on the efficiency of fuel. And frankly, I think the most promising thing is that we are now, looks like we're capable of building a single engine that will take you from 0 miles per hour on the runway, or 0 knots, I should say, up to Mach 10. Right now, as a matter of general feasibility, the advantages of air launch are not strong enough yet, because the launching vehicle, the big plane, is neither going high enough or fast enough to make it worth all of the complexity and all the other problems I mentioned. But when you can make a single engine, which is been built. Hermione has made one, and I'm fairly sure Lockheed has had one for quite a while now, which starts out as a turbojet, runs a turbofan, gets you up to, subsonic Mach speeds. Then you become a ramjet, and you use the ramjet to get you from Mach 1 to Mach 2 to 2 to 3, something like that. And then you reconfigure it again to become a scramjet, so now it's using supersonic air as a ramjet. That gets you up to Mach 10. If you're getting to Mach 10 at 120,000 feet aerodynamically, then the equation may tilt away from the recoverable vertical rocket booster. But right now, the advantages of launching from the ground outweigh the advantages from launching in the air, which is sad for me because I always thought that was the way to go into space, was on back of other airplanes. It's certainly, to me, the coolest way to go. But, by the way, the ultimate answer to this, and something I never really heard explained, is would be to use balloon. Balloons can get to 120,000 feet. Because a balloon is not the launching vehicle on a aerodynamic launch, like Strato launch, for example, that is using six 747 engines, and those are probably good up to 40,000, 45,000 feet, and high subsonic, so Mach 0.85 or something like that. A balloon gets you zero forward velocity, but the air resistance is a big part of why you need so much thrust. And if you can get balloons go to 120,000 feet or higher, I'm curious to know what would happen if you had a rocket that launched from high altitude helium balloon or hydrogen balloon, really high altitude. I have a feeling that it's probably not worth it because somebody would have tried it already, so there's some aspect of it that I'm not familiar with. But you could get that thing to 120,000 feet. It's not so much that the altitude helps you so much as you are now completely above the atmosphere. You don't have any atmosphere to deal with up there, essentially. And you can design your rocket engine and your nozzle and stuff for efficiency in a vacuum, unlike the way you have to design them if you're going to get it off of the ground at sea level. So there you go. Rushadark, topic gaming. Bill, I know you've been dealing with burnout and financial stresses a lot recently, so for consideration, thank you. What if you streamed yourself playing video games on the Stratosphere Studios channel? Doesn't have to be much, just once a week for a couple hours to unwind while bringing in passive income. Made the case before that gamers have a larger part of the pie than the entire conservative punditry class, and you're someone who walks in both worlds. You already have an audience to help seed this endeavor for social proof and could potentially bring in newer, younger blood as well, who come for the games but stay for the insightful commentary about politics and pop culture sprinkled into your gameplay footage, which could make compelling shorts as well. Well, isn't that interesting? Wow. I know you're doing the DCS thing, and games like Helldivers, Star Citizen, and Starfield have fallen off the map recently, but a couple of titles I think you'd enjoy would be Alien Isolation, Red Dead Redemption, Spec Ops The Line, Dead Space, and Player Unknown Battlefield, I think PUBG. I know that after 6 years of speaking to an empty theater, Thor from Pirate Software was able to start the largest ferret rescue in the Northwest just from Twitch ad revenue of the little critters. So it's a proven method that could kill at least 3 or 4 birds with one stone, depending on the title. I know people like me or GK Masterson would join in, probably others as well. Well, that's an interesting thought. Yes. The only thing I think that I would be competent to do would be DCS, and Growling Sidewinder has turned that into damn near 1 million subscribers. He's really found the formula. He's really good at what he does. I have seen Spudknocker go on 3-4 hour missions that are also kind of interesting. It's a thought. Growling Sidewinder goes up against, on a big mission he might face 5 or 6 adversaries. Usually it's one-on-one or, 1 versus 2 or 3 or something. I've been working on a DCS mission where I've got an incoming Chinese strike on an American carrier group that consists of 72 inbound aircraft. 72 of them, and you're in the first Hornets off the deck. Now the Hornets keep coming. They're launching them as fast as they can get them off of all four cats, and so there's this incoming. It's just a wet. It's not a red blob. It's various waves of incoming Chinese bombers. And if I keep the Hornets on the deck, then everything gets sunk. If I let the AI take over the first squadron, which is what I normally play, then usually you lose a couple of destroyers, but the carrier often will survive undamaged. You probably lose the Ticonderoga and a couple of Arleigh Burkes. And I'm trying to see if I can set it up so we don't lose anything. And so on this gigantic mission, what I do is so I'm just saying this to see if it sounds like it's interesting content. So what I realized was if we take off first, the flight of 4 takes off first, and instead of heading straight for the incoming group, if we divert by 30 degrees to the south, let's say, it pulls a lot of fighters with it. More than half of the fighters start coming after us because we're the first ones out and we're the first ones at altitude. And by pulling the fighters away, it lets the second, third, and fourth flights coming off the carriers get to the incoming bombers earlier. And I've been toying around with that mission only because it seems to me like that's what the reality would look like. So far, the problem is that I need to move the Chinese units back. I need to give the Americans more time to get in the air, because right now, using everything I can to jink and dodge out of the way, they still get off their I don't know, they get off like 100 cruise missiles or something like that. 40, 50 bombers, and they've each got 6 cruise missiles. And they launch, and there's these red waves going in, and you watch the AI, and the AI is deciding they're going to just go for this one destroyer, and it hasn't got a chance, So that kind of mission would be, I think, kind of interesting. And I'm looking, and I am going to include, DCS is one of the many things that I've been talking about doing and been just kind of spinning wheels on. But what I do think would be valuable game content, since you bring it up, would be this idea of taking, of building up a decently competitive squadron from the ground up, including people that have essentially just, either never flown before, get this scalp conditions, giving me these bits of dandruffy things, shouldn't be wearing black anymore. But in any event, I'll probably sooner than later. You know what? Based on the comment, to be honest with you, Marisha, maybe what I'll do is I'll just do one of them. I'll just record one of them, put them up there, and see what people think. See if they're interested in it. I know that's not how you build viewers or channel, but I'd be curious to get some feedback and see what people think, because that would be a way to turn the recreation into content. Right now, I'm still very reluctant to spend any recreation time when I've been so incapacitated by this inertia. It's like the dead marshes, But I do want to get that going, and it's so much more fun with more than one person involved. I don't know, been a little rough lately, so there we go. You got Janie Waterman and Jacob Belchik, and then I have to get back to editing some right angles here. Janie, I like Marisha's idea. I, for one, would support you, totally join in. I think that's what Twitch is used for, isn't it? Oh, that's a convenient question. Though I only joined it for TSS and TSL. Anyway, my new question is, how does story mechanics work for BillWater.com members versus non-members? Thanks. This is I'm sitting there looking at this wall, waiting for my super black paint and wondering when it's going to arrive. So that one I can actually answer. So let's take John Voight for an example. When I get a chance to talk to John, I plan to talk to him about at least 2 different subjects and maybe 3. I believe he's in the new Francis Ford Coppola movie. But I want to talk to him about two different things. So, finished product will be an edited interview. I did this for Sunday Morning Shootout for five years. I did 160 episodes or something like that, where we would record something like an hour 10, and I had to get it down to 23 minutes. And when you have that kind of compression, you can make just about anything interesting. I don't have a top end runtime, but I can definitely pull the air out of things and occasionally rearrange things a little bit just so that they track a little bit better. So that'll be released to everybody, because there's no point in trying to change the world if you're keeping all your content underneath a hat. So that'll be for everybody. So that one segment with John Voight would come down to maybe a 20-minute conversation about Midnight Cowboy, let's say. From that 20-minute conversation, I would pull several shorts, 60-second shorts, soundbite shorts. And then what members get is members only get the entire conversation from the time we turn the cameras on to the time we turn them off, which means all the backstage stuff, all the chatting, all the gossip, all that other stuff, which is interesting if you especially if you got some interest in the person. So there's that. And also I'm going to have set up so that members can submit questions, and the members will also be, this is more of a symbolic thing, but we're kind of committed to getting a really unique gift for every one of these people. And so for John Voight, I found the radio that he carried in Midnight Cowboy. There's only 2 of them left in the world. I got one of those, and those will be presented to him from the membership. So for Gary, I've got in a box over there. I've got a wheelchair. I have to do some minor things to it, but you'd think that getting the Lieutenant Dan wheelchair would be easy, but it's not. I had to look for that for weeks because it can't just be a wheelchair. It's got to be the wheelchair. It's got to be the radio. Otherwise, it has no meaning. So the members get to be a part of that as well, and that means a lot, I think, to a lot of people. It means a lot to me to be able to thank them that way, I know, and a lot of people expressed interest in being a part of that, so that's something else they get. Yeah, I'm sitting here waiting for this, and I'm just thinking, I'll just drop the screen and I'll improve it as I go. So I the many things I need to do, I need to get into gear with this. But that will be something that will be actually, a tangible benefit for membership, other than just being a swell person who's getting the message out. So that hopefully will be that. Let's see. And then Jacob Belchek. Hail Bill, hail Jacob. You've talked with great appreciation for the fool around and find out idea. It seems to be one of the great unifiers of humanity. And this goes back, by the way, I've read one sentence out of this. This is the ultimate carbon argument, right? This is the ultimate carbon argument. When I mentioned earlier, when I was talking about the battle between carbon and silicon, reality swings carbon, and fool around and find out is the universe talking to. Fool around and find out is carbon's response to silicon, and I love it. And I suspect you do too. I think anybody who's ever seen any kind of a video that is an example of fool around and find out, because fool around and find out to me is justice. And I mentioned I was doing some fairly deep psychological work in the last couple of days, and one of the things I was able to isolate, trying to find out why I was just so lethargic about things. What is your actual purpose? my purpose. Well, if I'm having trouble getting motivated, then I'm not connecting to my purpose. And what is that purpose? And I think what I've really boiled it down to is that for whatever reasons and how I was raised and the history of my life, that the one that really what my flaming sword is for is it is to fight injustice. That I have such a passionate hatred of injustice. This is why I'm so pro-American, because I think it's the most perfect system for human happiness and fairness that's been created. And I realize the limitations of humanity, and I don't consider those to be deal blockers. I know it's not going to be perfect. I just want it to be as good as it can be. But injustice and fool around and find out videos are justice. When somebody is having a conniption fit and throwing a tantrum like a 2-year-old when they're driving a car and they get arrested and they said, "You're not arresting me," and the next thing you know, they're in jail, that's fool around and find out. It makes me happy. Sometimes you'll see cases of road rage where somebody will, just get out of their car and smash somebody's windshield. The next thing you know, there's pop, 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 and that person's on the ground. It's like, fool around and find out. The classic fool around and find out kind of videos are, I saw one, I think earlier today. Some guy goes into a tiny little convenience store with a, looked like it was an AK or something, with a semi-automatic rifle. And the old man who was running the store, it was his store, saw him coming in the door, and he was ready. And the guy opens the door, levels this semi-automatic rifle. The guy behind the counter just has this shotgun leveled at him and just boom. Now, didn't put him down permanently, but he went a-running, and I just thought, if you didn't want to get shot with a shotgun, then probably shouldn't have held up this guy's store with a semi-automatic rifle. So, anyway, seems to be one of the great unifiers of humanity. I agree with you on this, Jacob. People have a natural abhorrence of injustice, and that's what fool around and find out means. You want to dick around and overstep your bounds and either push people or hurt them or just be annoying to them or whatever. Stop fooling around. And when the find out part comes, it's justice. It's sometimes they'll call it instant karma on a bunch of videos, but that's what it is. It's just justice. There was one example that was kind of famous, and it's, I don't know, maybe a little bit too much of the find out relative to the fool around. But there was this guy who was a YouTuber, and he was in a mall, and he just kept poking this guy, and he just kept poking him, and he's bigger than this guy is. And the guy said, "Leave me alone," and he's walking away, and he kept poking him and poking him and poking him and poking him and poking him, just to get the views, just to be a dick like some of these YouTubers that do nothing but just be obnoxious and get in people's faces and just do horrible things to them. And the next thing you know, this guy pulls out a gun and shoots him. I don't know if he killed him or not. I don't actually remember, but it's like, well, okay then, Okay, he said, "Leave me alone," a number of times. Carl Rittenhouse is a great example of fool around and find out. So yeah, this is reality. It is a unifier. When people see somebody behaving like a jerk, and then they get their comeuppance, it's a universal human reaction. Speaking of which, and I get to the rest of your question. Speaking of which, earlier today I was just flipping through. Come on, Bill. Jesus, Lord, I'm starting to look like it's a blizzard in here. I saw on a Facebook feed. I mean, really, seriously, man. A statement that said that from Jane Fonda, and said that Jane Fonda is preparing herself to die. And this was just a statement that apparently that Jane Fonda made on Facebook. I'm preparing myself for my own demise. So she's got to be 130 or something now, and she probably doesn't have a lot of time left. And I looked at the comments for this, and with one exception, every single comment was good Good. I can't wait. Be sure to let us know. Just nothing but but positive, like good. And I thought, well, there's a fool around and find out example for you, you know. I mean, that was 50 years ago or more when she was in North Vietnam and you know, hanging out with the North Vietnamese and talking about how horrible America is. And she claims that she was sitting on a anti-aircraft gun. She was saying that they weren't shooting it, and she had a bunch of. She's sitting on an anti-aircraft gun in North Vietnam, and Jim and John Kerry doing the same thing. And that fool around and find out has stayed with her for 60 years because that was a particularly egregious fool around. That was something that people have never forgotten. And one person in there said, I don't understand what all vitriol is about. What did Jane Fonda do? That's a perfectly normal reaction. It would happen in the Vietnam War. I don't expect people to know that today. And the first response to that was the only positive or supportive comment there was, what did she do? And some guy wrote, she exercised her constitutional rights. And I wrote, she exercised her constitutional rights in a country that forbids constitutional rights to attack the country that gave her the constitutional rights that she was constitutionally using anyway. So, yeah, you know, she does have a constitutional right to do that. She had a right to do it. She did it. And now the consequences, which have stayed with her for her entire life. It was you know, I was going to say it was virtue signaling. It was, you know, it was all of these things, you know, all the things you can say about it. But you know what it is ultimately what that thing was with Jane Fonda was just narcissism. That's all. Just that simple. Just that simple. Just plain narcissism. You know, she's a celebrity, wasn't super well known even at the time. She's rebelling against her dad. She's rebelling against society. She's rebelling against the culture. And she's decided that she's going to be important enough to go over there and make a difference. And all she did was become a propaganda tool. She made a difference. She did this. Eric says, it's sad our side has gotten to the point of verbally wishing death upon our enemies. That's the only person I've ever seen that. And by the way, that wasn't people going, I hope she dies. That was her saying, I'm about to die, and people going, good. Just narcissism. You know, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to end the war, or I'm going to show people. You know, piss off, Gene. I saw something on the same period earlier today where George Clooney or something, and his wife, Iranian-born wife, are responsible for like trying to bring some sort of international indictment against Netanyahu and the leaders of Hamas. To be fair, you know, like we're going to indict them both for the crime of, you know, Gaza and something like that. And it's like, wow. Okay, well, let's see how that works out, George. Let's see if George Clooney's power over international events will bring an end to the Palestine conflict. The narcissism of it, and now the irrelevance of it, just the sheer irrelevance. Jim Carrey actually got that right. He said after the Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, Jim Carrey said, it's over for Hollywood, you know. We used to be the cool kids. Now nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn. And you're right. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn. It doesn't matter. Anytime I see, you know, they're going to bring out, Biden's talking about bringing out George Clooney and Julia Roberts, and they're going to come out and, you know, and back Biden. And I actually think good. Bring them all out. This is not any, there's no way this is a net positive. I think it's actually a net loss. Bring them out. trot them all out. Bring every single celebrity you can. In fact, why don't you put Robert De Niro at the top of the ticket? Did you see what Jim Caviezel? I had a chance to sit with Jim Caviezel, not talk to him very much because he's a pretty quiet guy, but Caviezel was offered some role with De Niro, and he said, "I'm not going to be in a movie with him. He's an ungodly man. He's an evil guy." I thought, Jim, way to go, man. Way to go. That's what it takes, you know? That's what it takes. And then somebody says Mark Hamill or something. And then Mark Hamill is doing do you remember he was press secretary for a day? Remember the enormous impact that made on our society? It was just crickets. It was just, it wasn't even worth talking about. It was so cringe. It was just so cringe. They're going to bring out Luke Skywalker to be a press secretary for Joe Biden, and they think this is going to move the needle. So, move the needle, all right. You know, yeah, definitely move the needle. It wasn't important enough to be cringe. That's the ultimate measure of it. It was so lame and so irrelevant that it wasn't even worth talking about. It's just, okay. Yeah, Barbara Streisand has apparently said if Trump wins, she's moving to Canada. This is the 15th time they've said this. It used to be like, people used to say, well, then if you don't, then just go. Now it's like, Barbara who? What the hell does she have to do with anything? Honestly. Just the narcissism epidemic and the worship of the golden idol is over. And that's a really good sign, because now I look at these back in the business we used to call this kudos season, which is past now. It's in generally January, February, March, where it used to be, oh look, all these important glamorous people and all these people. Now for 15 years now, it's like, can this be more self-mocking? All of these insecure people standing in front of other insecure people, waiting to receive some piece of, tchotchke thing that they could put on their wall so that they can, feel a little less insecure. It's just sad. It's just sad. Okay, anyway, back to this question, which I just ran off with. You've talked with great appreciation for the fool around and find out idea, and it seems to be one of the great unifiers of humanity. Everybody sees it, everybody recognizes it when it happens, and everybody loves to watch it happen to people they don't like. In biblical terms, this is called the law of sowing and reaping. Cultures that embrace this thrive. Amen to that. Perfect. It seems that this could easily be a shorthanded meme to answer pretty much everything. Attack American Navy in Pearl Harbor? Yeah, exactly. That's a whole lot of fooling around, and you should expect to find out quite a lot. Preach a gospel of covetousness and revenge in 1917 Russia? That's enough fooling around to land you 80 years of hell on earth. I could go on. In your experience, does progressive culture have any grasp on the law of sowing and reaping? None whatsoever. This is the fundamental, one of, if not the fundamental difference between the left and the right. If it's not the fundamental difference, it's certainly one of them. The left is incapable of understanding cause and effect. That's why they support Palestine, because they cannot understand cause and effect. Cause and effect is about the most simple, real-world phenomenon that anybody with common sense can see. Anybody. And you have to be extraordinarily nimble mentally to divorce cause and effect from your mental horizon. But that's what they do. That's exactly what they do. They vote for Democrats, and Democrats have run American cities, and we have 8,000 black people murdering other black people every year in this country, and they cannot put the cause and the effect. They will look at somebody on trial for murdered, a family of four by cutting them up with a salad fork, and all they see is a person there on trial for their life, and they don't understand cause and effect. They see this person being convicted of murder and maybe getting the death sentence, and they feel so sorry for him, and we got to do something, got to go protest. It's like, but they didn't see the murders, and they can't connect cause and effect. That's why they defend criminals, because they don't see that, hey, it was unreasonable for this person to have shot this. Rittenhouse is a great example, but somebody comes in through your window at 4:00 in the morning, and they smash the glass, come in your window, and they get shot in the face, and they're killed. And it turns out that they end up taking the side of this guy, and they say it was a disproportionate response, and he wasn't armed, or what, as if the people who did the shooting knew this. And I just keep coming back to, hey, if the kid didn't want to get shot, he probably shouldn't have gone breaking into somebody's window at 4 a.m. I don't break into somebody's window at 4 a.m. because if I did and got shot, I wouldn't be surprised about it. I would deserve it. So they can't connect the two, and this is why they can't. This is why they're against the death penalty, but they're pro-abortion, because they don't see guilt and innocence. They can't connect them to cause and effect. That's what justice is. Justice, the idea of guilt and innocence is, did you cause something or did you not? Did you murder this person? Who started it? That's, to me, the essence of it. This is the fundamental moral reason why I support Ukraine. It's like, who started this? If Ukraine had invaded Russia, I'd be morally. They're wrong. They're in the wrong, and I don't know why they are so profoundly incapable of getting this. And when you really get down to it, what it really comes down to is not just not just an inability to recognize responsibility, but kind of a denial that it exists. It's like a denial of responsibility as a thing. Well, just because he murdered these people doesn't mean that he should have to be, put in the electric chair. Didn't want to get put in the electric chair, maybe shouldn't have murdered these people. He started it. The family didn't come up to him, strap him down, and put him in an electric chair just because they felt like it. And you can't have justice, and you can't have a peaceful society if you cannot recognize cause and effect and guilt and innocence. You just can't. And so reality comes in, there you go. Gersha says if it's about who started it, the pro-Palestinian people would argue Israel started it when the Brits first moved a bunch of Jews into that part of the world, displacing the people who were living there, which is convenient, except that the Jews were living there before the Palestinians because Judaism goes back to 5,000 years and Islam goes back to 750. So that argument is kind of hooey. And I'm not gonna get into that, other than to say that the number of times that Palestine has turned down workable solutions is something I've been able to count on several fingers, and what happened on October 7th. October 7th occurred in order so that they would have bodies to portray on television so they can advance their moral cause. I'm not going to reward them for that. They didn't do October 7th in order to kill 1,200 Jews. They did October 7th in order to kill thousands of Palestinians. That's why Hamas did it. And anybody who doesn't see that has got real problems. Hamas did what it did on October 7th in order to generate tens of thousands of Palestinian victims. Can you not see that? It's obvious. It's crystal clear. That's why they're evil. That's the entire purpose of it, was to provoke a kind of response that would be so overwhelming they knew they could count on their allies in the media and all the rest of these people can't tell cause and effect. They've actually advanced their cause. That's what's actually happened. Palestine goes over and murders 1,200 people on purpose, bashes babies' heads against the walls because they understood the Western liberal inability to determine cause and effect, and therefore they're in a better position now, publicity-wise, than they were before they committed this atrocity. So, I'm when it comes to Palestine, I'm one of those fool around and find out guys. I am definitely one of those fool around and find out kind of guys. Hamas and Palestine are two different things, like condemning all Americans for Biden supporters and Antifa. Well, it's something like 75-80% of the Palestinians support Hamas. And I didn't see anybody doing anything about those naked bodies that were being paraded around through the streets of Gaza when they were cheering and screaming. And I'm not going to get into this now, not this late in the day, and not on this show. But I know why they did what they did, and you are giving them what they want, and I'm not in favor of doing that for murderers. And it makes you also wonder, if their cause is so just, then why do they have to resort to such repugnant means to advance it? And I don't mean just once. First time I ever heard the word Palestinian was watching people murdering innocent athletes in the 1972 Olympics. First time I ever heard the term. So this is your strategy. This is your path, and okay, you're going to get the reaction you're going to get. That's it for all the questions and some interesting stuff earlier on, especially. So in any event, that'll do it for the show tonight here on Stratosphere Studio. Our Monday night outing, 2 hours and 45 minutes around, or somewhere around there. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Sad Rings. It's just, yeah, it's a strategy. It's a decision. That's a better word. It's a decision. It's a decision, and the objective was to have dead Palestinians. And they had to make it awful enough so that there were a lot of dead Palestinians. And that's exactly what they did, and they got what they wanted. So, just interesting to me that the government of Gaza has a strategy that depends on large numbers of their own people being killed. That's basically how it works. I apparently missed a super chat, and I'm going to have to apologize for that, because I'm trying to scroll here and I can't seem to find it. So sorry if I missed a super chat, and if you please do a 10-cent super chat next time, I'll be happy to answer that, and I'm sorry I missed it. Anyway, this show is made possible by the members of BillLittle.com, who continue to do the things that they do, and they just keep on keeping on. God bless them. So we'll see you Thursday night, I'm sure, for Stratosphere Lounge. I'm going out of town on the 25th for 4 or 5 days. Tasha and I going for a little vacation. Hopefully that'll help reset, but I've got a lot to do before I go, and I need to get started on these things. So it was very, very gratifying in a not a happy kind of way, but in a sort of a relief kind of way, to see that other people were feeling this too, because I've heard it from many people. They're just feeling just absolutely lethargic, and it makes me wonder if there's not something in the water or something. Anyway, that'll do it. So we'll say goodbye to our friends on YouTube first. Thanks for joining us, YouTube, and we'll see you probably see you Thursday night for Stratosphere Lounge. Hooray!